This series is going to be the aftermath of the FBI raid on Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao's home and its impact on Oakland itself and Oakland government. And I talked about the fact that this was a historic moment, that we're now just 2 days away from a week after it happened, and that it's time to really reassess, if you will, reassess the damage and the impact. And so that's what these live streams are about, these series. And I then said that the a lot of we immediately had the involvement of the mainstream media, which basically didn't even know about the people, the players involved. Sure, they interviewed Mayor Thao, but they had no idea who the Dong family were, and the other threads that were being unraveled were quickly because of it, or the fact that I was the only media person to actually interview the folks that they were talking about, like Reneo Webb, and had blogged about Andre Jones, the mayor's boyfriend, and others, and then on top of that, there's the impact on. Well, there's the fact that the mayor was already set to be recalled, the focus of a recall vote, because the recall vote could go in her favor. All right, there is that. There's that possibility. It doesn't mean that Shang's career as mayor of Oakland is gone. You have to wait until the election. Anything can happen. And so, but it is clear that we have stepped into a whole new world that was built off the foundation of the one that we were getting, just getting used to. There's an ineffective government and just error after error, like the grant, where you nationally may not be aware of this, but the city of Oakland missed a grant deadline that could have gotten a considerable amount of money toward the effort of crime fighting in Oakland at a time when, well, yes, needed the most. And so I'm missing some sugar here and just a little bit, and I'm missing a spoon for my coffee. Anyway, oh, by the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm Zeddy Abraham. I'm Oakland's first vlogger and blogger. I started Oakland's first blog in 2003, first YouTube partner channel. I was invited to be a YouTube partner in late 2007, and there you go. Now, back to the subject. But where we are today is the Oakland I have always known is one that I actually worked in. I worked for two mayors of Oakland. Elihu Harris from 1995 to 1999, and then from 1999 to 2001, Jerry Brown, where I was put in charge of bringing Super Bowl to Oakland. Got to within 8 NFL votes of doing so, and then found that Jacksonville lied, and so I feel like we won. They lied about their hotel rooms, but they were able to straighten themselves out rather than us getting it in Miami. At any rate, so I, because of that experience and other experiences with the mayors, know this situation better than a number of people. And the Oakland I worked for was a council manager form of government. We had professionals who were in charge in different areas, who had, like, say, a master's degree of public policy or master's of city and regional planning and so on from Berkeley and so on. Now, because of one change ushered in by Jerry Brown, our mayors have had the power to hire and fire the chief administrative officer, the person who is really the true CAO of the city. So you have the true CAO of the city, trained to be that by, training in school, being bossed by a lay person. And while our first go at this was Jerry Brown, who was experienced in government, there was always a specter out there that we were going to get someone who was new and had their ideas, but was fortunate enough to get enough votes either, and then so we ushered in ranked choice voting in 2010. Jean Quan won, but Jean was already a council member, and but also arguably a lay council member if you consider a lay mayor if you consider her background before council member with education and everything else. I'm not putting that down, but I'm saying she's not a trained public official, right? All right. Sheng Thao today has that same pedigree in a sense, and and she's nothing wrong with being very young, but she's a type of being very young that is not comfortable with the fact that they don't know certain things and they don't want it to be known because they think that maybe they're going to be disrespected. And then, of course, there's Mayor Tao's own very unfortunate history that involves domestic abuse, which I believe has really, really clouded her, how she looks at things, how she's ran the city, and her understandably, understandably enormous desire for success, if only to prove everybody wrong. Okay? But in there have been a gigantic, enormous series of missteps, and more so than anybody else. More so. And then revelation, then she started off firing a popular police chief, Lerone Armstrong, for made up reasons. And it looked like she had a plan to do it anyway. Had launched this idea just before she got elected, and then set it in motion. Only because some told me she wanted an Asian police chief. Others pushed back on that, but whatever. That's what I was told. That's what I'm going with. Because the reverse basically is more explosive. If it was found out to be true 100%, as opposed to those ducking for cover whenever the matter is raised. So anyway, but the bottom line is that this all happened also as crime was through the roof. Because of the pandemic, the city had not done anything in activating legislation that would have gotten more money to business improvement districts, for example, to get security and, well, a number of changes that I could go into, right? Never happened. So, and then of course there was our gigantic homeless situation. I should say there is our gigantic homeless situation, which, and the reason why it's still large is because the city elected officials started looking at, quite rightly to a degree, affordable housing. But affordable housing takes time. If you have people who are already on the street, asking them to wait a year or 2 years for new housing to be available is cruel and unusual punishment, as opposed to getting them a outsized cash assistance so that they can get right back on their feet. Like say, hey, look, we're going to spend $100 million correcting this problem. Oakland's never done that, yet that's what it would take. All right, that's what it would take. $100 million of assistance, $50 million of it going to real estate organizations and the tenants, so that they're made whole from their losses, and that their current tenants can stay in their place. And okay, we didn't do we started to do that with money from the state, but we were capable of financing it well on our own, and we didn't. And then when the idea that there was this idea that, well, the pandemic is over, we're okay, and everything else, and arguably, look, the pandemic, as far as I'm concerned, will be over when COVID-19 is completely out of our society. It's not. It's still there. There are people still dying from it. Okay, and so, as far as I'm concerned, we're not out of the pandemic at all. So, in all of this, we have had, because of these problems, we've had and the exodus of businesses from Oakland because they didn't receive the assistance they could have gotten under AB 464 Mullen. And again, the city doing absolutely nothing, whereas by contrast, Hayward, California, just south of Oakland, has really its economic development program taken a focus on getting assistance to its local businesses at a rate that puts Oakland to shame. So this clearly has been something wrong here. All right. And so all of this was the case prior to the raid. All of this was the case prior to the raid. And when Sheng came in, not only did she try to get and did get Lerone Armstrong booted, because she's strong mayor and could do that, she also tried to force an enormous $75,000 raise for herself. Okay? And I'm not joking, $75,000 raise. I mean, I have to repeat it myself just because it was so brazen. And look, she got her raise. There was a hue and cry, she got her raise. But Sheng had mastered the art, and through her staff and her consultants, of using the media to push out that her idea is okay. Basically, Sheng had adopted Trump tactics in advancing her agenda. But it's one thing to have Trump tactics to advance your agenda, but if you're not operating the city properly, it's only going to upset people more, and she wasn't operating the city properly. Okay? Trump tactics are dividing people. Number one, I don't care what anyone says, Sheng Thao is the first mayor in our history to set up on a course of dividing people. She showed it in her speech after the raid. Now, this is not meant to be personal to Sheng. I actually like Sheng. I have for a long time. But I don't like how she's changed or how she's treated a number of people, including myself. That's just a fact. She has Jen Tran was on my program over the weekend, who you've probably heard, and has been the focus of a number of incorrect mainstream media reports. But she worked for Sheng, not as campaign consultant, but just for 3 weeks, and left because she said that the organization and Sheng in particular were vindictive. Leona Powell, who filed a complaint against Sheng Tao's council office because they're trying to force her to work on Sheng's mayoral campaign effort, said that they were toxic. They were toxic. And she just said to me very recently that what she experienced in working for Sheng, and then Renia Webb was the chief of staff, was constant daily attacks like, why didn't you contact X person? And yelling at her. And Leanna would say, improve. Hey, I did. See right here. And it was like, oh. But this would happen every single day to a point where Ms. Powell was quite literally shell-shocked. She'd walk in the office, just didn't know where sniper fire was going to come from Ms. Webb next. This is not me saying this. Ms. Powell said this on our program, okay? So it's clear that has been a big, giant problem. Ms. Powell filed an ethics commission complaint. Complaint became an investigation, and 2 years later, it's still ongoing. Meanwhile, Leona Powell is suffering and is battling cancer. Stress. She told me that from what she experienced working for Sheng contributed to it. Her words, not mine. Okay? Her words, not mine. So all of this was in play, and many more matters with the A's and how that was handled, and the mistruths told about that just to make the mayor look good, and while the A's had decided back in late 2021, hey, we're off to Las Vegas because, this process isn't working as fast as we need it to work. And so, and it was unstable because they were forcing a vote. The newly minted council members, Carol Fife among them, and Kevin Jenkins were threatening a vote to ask, hey, the public, hey, do you really want to have this new ballpark? And given the fact that we hadn't recovered from the pandemic, that we have an inordinate number of homeless people, that we have a have-not society at a level we've never seen before. We have a lot of people struggling for money, and that shouldn't be the case. Uh, because of that, that ballot initiative, if it went ahead, would have had a good chance of passing and working against the athletics. So the athletics were really right to fear that possibility. And it didn't happen. This wasn't something that was called for on the onset 2018 when Howard Terminal was proposed. It was called for in 2022, years later. While and it was called for after the Athletics had rightly decided that they were going to leave for Las Vegas in late 2021. So as far as the Athletics were concerned, this is another reason to get out of Oakland. All right, another reason. Uh, so, but the after, so all of that and many more examples lay the foundation for where we were when Sheng Tao's house was raided. And that was the coup de grace. First of all, getting raided is not something that anyone wants to have happen to them. We see it happen on television to people all the time, but for criminal activities. And generally they're raided because somebody is ensconced in a place and there's a warrant for their arrest and they haven't been able to find them, that sort of thing. But this was different. And out of that came two different stories. The front story, told to me by the short-lived Tony Brass, who was a lawyer hired by Sheng Tao to basically be her consigliere, like the Godfather, in the middle of all of this, had told me by a text that the FBI had not asked any questions prior to the raid. Now, then you start putting together these bits and pieces which points to the very, very real possibility that Sheng and Andre Jones and others knew that this raid was happening before it happened and made a plan. Now, what I believe, in fairness to them, is that to Sheng and Andre, is that they were tipped off early to it, like hours early, and then rushed to launch a plan whereby Sheng would be at Oakland City Hall because she had some very important meetings to attend in the business of the city to do, and Andre would stay by at the house and watch over the family, including his mother who was there. All right? So this was by no means an easy situation for them. They're lay people, and they're not ones who would ever expect that what happened to them happened. And so it points to, speculation. A number of people have immediately tried. What happened was, first, a number of people immediately looked at the Duong's background with respect to investigations. And unfortunately, there's no other story about the Duongs out there stateside. Now, Vietnam, it's a different story, okay, where David Duong hails from, and had a really sad story of literally coming over here on a boat. And so, and going from rags to riches, from poor to self-made millionaire through California Waste Solutions. And he has a family of wonderful people. Wonderful people that I have, full disclosure, have not yet met. I say wonderful people because I've read about their backgrounds and everything else, but I haven't met them face to face yet. And so, but a number of people that I know them. At any rate, when the digging ensued online regarding this. And as that was happening, the mayor's former chief of staff, who quit on her on New Year's Eve of 2022 and put out an email that was sent directly to me, uh, suddenly surfaced on television, uh, saying that essentially that she was the person who gave out the information to the FBI and contracted the DOJ. And that's true. Renia did do that. But when Renia did that, she didn't mention to myself or Seneca Scott when she brought her story to us and to me as a news reporter, a news blogger, I prefer to say, because that's what I am. And that's what we do. Uh, she never mentioned the Duongs. She never mentioned anything about campaign finance issues. How that story came up, because that was told, she talked to us January 15th, and she said by February 3rd, she had told that to the FBI and the DOJ. And so how she got from having us focus on, and in particular me, focus on um, Andre Jones in particular and Sheng is a missing piece. Because on January 15th, I eventually put out my post on this on February 20th of 2022. She sent myself and Seneca Scott simultaneously a explosive set of text messages that were shared between herself and Mayor Thao. All right? Now think about what I'm telling you, though. Think about how messy this is. All right? Are governments supposed to, I have to ask you, are governments supposed to operate that way? No. And it's very easy to get wound down into the rabbit hole, okay? And say, okay, there's this that happened and that, and then take your eye off the ball of the bigger picture. Social media also allows focusing, drilling down to a microscopic level that can really take you off the ball. But at any rate, um, she put them out there, but she never mentioned the Duongs. So suddenly, this time, it's Duong City. Duong City. And then Lauren Taylor, who lost the election to Sheng by 677 ranked choice votes. That's it. That's it. And I might add, you should go and watch my video interview with Alameda County Registrar Tim Dupuy of a year and a half ago. That's almost 2 hours long. The Registrar of Voters of Alameda County was kind enough to give me the time and do what's called a TED Talk, if you will, on the subject of ranked choice voting and how they handle it. A very fascinating conversation that I'm grateful to the Registrar for giving me. At any rate, that was how Lauren lost and Sheng won. So the now he's out there that with that loss, Lauren is, and by 677 votes. That's it. And he now sees an avenue to tell his story and get his word out and say, hey, you know what? I think I can close this deal after all. Be mayor, right? And he's seeding, talking to a number of people that I know, putting out the word, making his, having these private meetings with people, and in other related activities. Talking about Lauren Taylor. So he's trying to maneuver in position, and in doing so, he takes information that he gave to me a year ago and he alters it initially. What he did was, a year ago, there was a gentleman by the name of Mario Juarez, who I've known since 2007. And he's ran for office, District 5 council member against my friend Ignacio de la Fuente. And But Mario had ostensibly hired a man by the name of Samari Johnson at his printing company to print these flyers that a number of people have identified as racist. Now, Samari is black. But the $53,000 that Samari was owed was never paid to him by Mario. Lauren tapped me, didn't pay me. But I say tapped, just said, hey, give it to Zinni to tell the story. Have Samari go over to Zinni, and Zinni will get his story out there, and that's precisely what I did. I knew Samari for 47 minutes. Over that time, it's on Zinni62 YouTube here, not once did the name of the Duongs come up. So I'm thinking, okay, so now why all of a sudden does it look like there's this shifting strategy, right? Where a year plus ago, the Duongs weren't in the picture regarding either Rainia's complaint or Lauren's, and now they are made to be front and center if you watch ABC7, okay? And by my friend in particular, Dan Noyes, right? And so I figured that what they were trying to do in this was not just take the heat off Sheng and put it on the Duongs, but by taking the heat off Sheng, theoretically, they would take the heat off of all of the elected officials that got her elected and the campaign finance process that was used to get money to her that also involved the Duongs. And they thought, well, let's just place it directly on the Duongs, which, might seem logical at surface, but when you start digging down, not too deep, you realize that's actually not the best strategy. It's always better to go with a comprehensive strategy and not leave out part of the story, particularly in this case, okay? Not a good idea. So there was this effort to, do that, put the Duongs out there. And the Duongs are, from my observation, it's easy to determine, not savvy at protecting themselves online in ways that anyone should do today. And that's another story for another time, or more going into what Zinni62 Media does to begin with, and what I always encourage other people to do with respect to digital, or I should say online health, online reputation health is basically what that is. So whatever the case, they're not savvy in that way. A lot of people aren't. So the result is that this void is filled with the mainstream media stories and views about the Duongs, and no counter. People say that, the people doing this call themselves journalists, right? But look, as I understood it, and this is the reason why I don't call myself a journalist, I say I'm a blogger, is because a journalist is supposed to be objective and tell both sides of a story. These folks have been masquerading as bloggers, all right? Using what they consider to be facts to back what really is an unstated opinion about the Duong family. It is media news malpractice at its finest. That's what it is. And that's what we've seen go on in the aftermath of the raid. And it takes an effort to clean it up. So the Duongs have suffered from this. Dan Calb was on my program October 26th, 2020, saying that he didn't get straw donor donations from the same source, including Jin Tran's father. And on top of all that, Dan also said there were no bags of money at all. There's been an undercurrent of racism, against anti-Asian racism, that has come into this. It's really, very sad. And you should see the comments online. And there was one YouTube video that made fun of the Duongs, and in a way that was just out and out racist. All right. So the aftermath of this also is the racism, an unconscious racism that's attached to this matter, and then some in the media trying to take disparate uh, examples, disparate parts of the Oakland Public Ethics Commission's investigation, and believing that they're relevant to today, when in point of fact they're not, because they only dig halfway, right? For example, like this restaurant that closed in 2019, and they said, well, it was owned by Andy Duong and all that, but there was actually no concrete hard evidence that it was. It's circumstantial text or whatever. I mean, when someone says that, I say, okay, so much, you're going to say that. I show you the text. Show me the text. Show me the text, okay? I want to see that. So again, innocent until proven guilty. Because what happens now is like, oh, you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that. I'm saying innocent until proven guilty. That's the way our country is structured, right? Now, if you want to argue that we're really heading toward a totalitarian government, it's very difficult for me to argue against you. All right. So that's part 2. I'll be back with part 3. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark Zenny62blog.com. Oh, and then San Diego News. That's right. San Diego Comic Con News.com.